None of this was the plan. My dad used to recruit from SMU in its early days. He'd fly in, meet the graduates, fly back to Mumbai impressed. One trip, he brought home a brochure and my sister read it, and she ended up applying to SMU and no other university in the world. She came here 6 years before I did, and by the time it was my turn, I'd visited enough times, heard enough stories that I knew what I was walking into. But my heart was set on going to school in the US. There was a mix-up with some documents and that door closed, so I ended up coming to SMU instead. Looking back, it turned out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. People think a city university doesn't have any student life, that because you go home at night, nothing really happens here. But I did 7 or 8 orientation camps in my first year as a facilitator, as part of the organizing committee. I practically lived in the underground spaces of this campus. I was in the arts, spent most of my time, and even lived with people I wouldn't have otherwise met. Malaysians, Koreans, Indonesians, Singaporeans, all of whom have become lifelong friends since. What you learn spending that much time with people from across Asia is that our differences are mostly superficial. Beneath our different accents and cultures, all of us want the same things. We care about the same values, and I just didn't realize how much that realization would matter later. But it turns out that understanding how people think, what actually drives them, what they're afraid of, and what shapes their decisions is at the heart of most of the work when it comes to life and leadership. Through the SMU Students Association, I went to a leadership conference at the US Military Academy at West Point. That was when I first heard about Schwarzman Scholars. I came back to Singapore and applied. Professor Ong Xiao Heng, then Dean of International Affairs, wrote personally to the Director of Admissions. Dean of Students Professor Strawn was one of my official recommenders. Professors Ishani Mukherjee, Ijlal Naqvi, and Ulash Inche went out of their way not just to endorse my application, but to advise me on how to frame my story. My friend Estella coached me on China over dinner the night before. And then there was the interview itself. At the end of every Schwarzman interview, they ask you a curveball question, something outside of your area of expertise. I think my ability to handle that question, which was all thanks to SMU and Prof. Rao, was a big part of why I made the cut. I became the first and only SMU alumnus selected for the program. At SMU, when you need the institution to go and bat for you, it does. 7 years after graduating from SMU, I found myself working alongside presidents and prime ministers across multiple countries. In Timor-Leste, I served as an embedded advisor to President Ramos Horta, briefing him before meetings with the presidents of China, India, and Vietnam as Timor-Leste worked towards its accession of ASEAN. In a Central Asian country, my team and I built the country's first ever economic development board. It's now operational. The soft skills, the ability to read a room, to understand what a leader actually needs to hear, to frame an idea so that it lands. That's what got me a seat at the table. Those are precisely the skills that SMU sharpens. There's a quote from James Clear I keep coming back to. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. SMU was the system. The student life, the friendships, the task forces, the people who showed up for me. At the time, none of it felt especially significant. In hindsight, the whole was so much greater than the sum of its parts, and that has shaped my journey ever since. A mentor once told me, the people who make an impact are the ones who run towards the fire, not away from it. I didn't choose SMU. Not really. A brochure, a document mix-up, a sister who came here 6 years before me. But this was where I discovered what I really cared about. I found out how to show up for people and shape policies. And that has made all the difference.